to connect ourselves educationally, but it's undeniable, I think, by now, that they pose many risks, especially for those who don't have the maturity and the key elements to understand the risk that they pose. And we speak about children, we speak about teens. Let me give you some figures. Today, at global scale, teenagers aged between 11 and 14 spend around 9 hours per day on screen, and children aged between 8 and 10 spend around 6 hours per day on screens. Concerning content online, I put the example of Spain because it's the one I know better. 7 out of 10 teenagers consume pornography on a regular basis, and more than half of them, they have been in touch with this content since 6-8 years old. So it is not surprising that a growing demand from the civil society, from parents, from educators, from policymakers is raising during the last years to find effective and urgent solutions to what has become a public health crisis, both physical and mentally, brought about by the unregulated use of digital platforms by young people. And I think it's very important to tackle this issue as a public health perspective. Like in the past, oceans and airspace were not regulated, but last century we did it. So now we need to regulate the digital space. So what Europe has been doing in the last years, you are all very aware that the last term, the European Union, the European institutions, we already worked a lot with the digital laws, especially the Digital Services Act, also the Artificial Intelligence Act, which are a global precedent for regulating large tech companies within the EU. So thanks to this pioneering legislation, we can now put the focus on the responsibility of major platforms on the content that is shared through their platforms towards the users, with particular attention to the most vulnerable ones. And you know very well, the Article 28 of DSA tackles this. So I want to just make two direct consequences on the enforcement of this article. First of all, the ongoing legal processes from the European Commission against big social platforms like TikTok, like X, like Meta. And on this, we would be really waiting for the views from part one from the European Commission, how these investigations are going. And secondly, as you know, the Commission published last July the guidelines on the protection of minors, outlining various mechanisms of age assessment, which is essential to ensure that the online content is age appropriate for young users. Derivated from that, you know that also the Commission is working with 5 member states to develop these pilot projects on an age verification tool, in order to prevent them the access to harmful content such as pornography. On this, we will be also looking forward to hear the views from the Minister of Digital Affairs. So what remains to be done? A lot still. So of course, the demand is still growing and the issue is not solved. So from our perspective, I just want to underline 3 lines. First of all, from the S&D group, and the presence of our group leader here is a very proof of it. We have been putting this issue at the center of our political action since the beginning of the term. We have been pushing to have a NINI report in IMCO, also in CULT. They are working nowadays to have clear messages to the European Commission on what remains to be done, which is a lot. And secondly, I think that our pressure is working, as we have seen the recent speech by President von der Leyen in the SOTEU, when she highlighted that this topic will be one of her priorities, opening the possibility to have a panel of experts and also opening the debate to have a minimum digital age harmonized in the European Union. We know it's a very sensitive issue, and I think that today we can also take the opportunity to exchange if we are ready, if it's feasible, but we cannot deny that the topic is on the table, that some states, Australia, UK, are working on that. And my personal view is that this minimum digital age should be accompanied by an effective and robust tool on age verification that goes hand in hand in order to not only have the minimum age, but to have real enforcement and to real control that the access of our children is correct. Finally, also taking President von der Leyen intention letter to the Parliament, we look ahead with expectations to the upcoming Digital Fairness Act to address issues that they are not tackled in the DSA, like addictive designs, dark patterns, rabbit holes, video game, or the role of influencer, which are all crucial to have a digital safe space. Finally, I want to take the opportunity to briefly present the project I launched in June, which is this website that you have here, Share to Protect EU, because I believe that we have a duty from the policymakers, from the civil society, to work on this issue. And basically, with this website, what I aim to is, first of all, to break the taboo, which I think it is still remaining on this issue, especially for parents that they have suffered in their own families sad or dramatic cases. And we can talk about low attendance at school, but we can talk about cyberbullying, we can talk about eating disorders that can bring, in the worst cases, to self-harm and even suicide. There is a lot of taboo, but we need to tackle this. Also, the radicalization of the speech of our children. Many topics that I want to tell the parents that it's not their responsibility only. Of course, parents have a responsibility, but big tech companies are the ones responsible that some of the most horrible and dangerous content is distributed online, and especially these rabbit holes that create the algorithm to bring you to the worst content possible. So on this, it was the first goal. And the second one was, of course, as policymaker, to understand better the challenge, the reality. So that's why I explained the initiative in the website, the goals. There is a form, very easy, very simple, to collect these testimonies, anonymous. I want to make very clear that it's anonymous. I don't care who is the person, but specifically the cases that can enrich my knowledge. And hopefully by I have a timetable of some months, I can collect many of them, and I can go to the European Commission and put pressure in order to have effective laws that are the ones that can protect our children. Finally, I also have a part of resources, which is a collection of public and official websites that promote responsible use of the social platforms. So I think from the European Commission to some national states. So that's it. I encourage all of you to share to protect.eu. And with this, I just want to thank you all. I really hope that we will have a fruitful debate. And now I give the floor to my dearest Irache to address some words to you. And thank you all.
Thank you, Laura, for organizing this event. Really, I am very happy to be here with you all today to this important discussion. I had the opportunity sometimes to discuss and exchange with my colleague and my friend Laura about this question. And it's so important to have key players like Laura and like other colleagues in our group to put priority this important question, because really we have a lot of things to do. We need to start with courage and with a lot of intelligence to know how can we act in the right direction. Take a moment to think about your day so far. For most of us, it started and continued with the screen. We use them for everything, to wake up, to check the weather, to read the news, get work, pay our bills, and I could go on, really. Our phones, tables, and computers have become part of our lives, an essential element of the very fabric of our society. This digital revolution has brought huge benefits, of course. We have to recognize, like access to information, global connection, and new ways to work and learn. But for our children, this digital world, it's all they ever known. And while it offers them so many opportunities, because really offers so many opportunities, it also comes with real and serious risk. We see this risk every day. We see the struggle with digital addiction as children feel the need to always be online and are afraid of missing out if they don't read their message immediately. This is this new word, no, FOMO. I was all summer, this summer break, reading questions about FOMO with our children. And it's a clear example. We see a lack of concentration as their minds are trained to be interrupted and to seek instant rewards and quick content. We see changes in behavior with a rise in anxiety and social isolation. And most worrying of all, we see the danger of online harassment and bullying that can follow them everywhere, even inside their homes. These are not small issues. They are very real threats to the health and well-being of the next generation. So the question we need to answer here today is what we can do to make the online world safer for our children. As you can imagine, I don't have a magical solution to propose to you, but I think the discussion should revolve around some basic principles. Let me start by underlining the precautionary principle, the better be safe than sorry principle. In regulatory terms, this translates into safety by design. We should put safety first and build in protections from the very beginning. This principle ensures that the safety of our children is a priority, not an afterthought. Of course, digital literacy is important to teach young people how to use the internet responsibly, how to recognize risk, and how to protect themselves online. But let's be honest here. So much of what they use is designed to be addictive and to keep them glued to their screens for hours that it's not possible to rely only digital literacy. It is necessary to put in place concrete measures to limit export to inappropriate content. There is existing legislation, as the EU has taken important steps to impose a stricter obligation on online platforms, particularly through legislation such as Digital Service Act, the General Data Protection Regulation, and the Audiovisual Service Directive. However, these are not enough. We need to focus on the implementation, but also on additional instruments. Time restrictions are one thing, and parents often impose them on their children. But the elephant in the room is actual content. And we know that certain platforms, certain types of social media are more inappropriate or harmful than others. So we have to discuss age limits. Laura mentioned this question, and see what we can put in place in Europe in this regard. We do it in other fields. We have to do it here too. I think that it's very simple. If we are doing in other fields, why not? In this important question. I know this is tricky, of course, because we also touch upon the question of age verification while respecting privacy and data protection principles. But we have a responsibility to get it right. For those of you who know me, this will not come as a surprise. I am a fan of discussion and brainstorming to determine the way forward. We politicians, lawmakers, administrators cannot decide alone in a vacuum what is the best way forward. There are too many pieces of the puzzle to consider, and the stakes are high. We have to have and the discussion involve tech companies, experts, schools, psychologists, civil society to share knowledge and propose concrete regulatory instruments and safety standards. And that is a clear example. We are here in these different responsibilities and knowledge to try to have this brainstorming and put in our minds open minds and understand much better what other things about this question to try to have a common understanding. Really, I'm very happy to have participated today discussions which start this process of brainstorming. The digital world is a part of our lives and we cannot try to go back. But we have a deep responsibility to ourselves and to our children to act. I wish you a constructive discussion. Thank you very much for your attention. Thanks a lot.
No? Thank you so much, Irache. A really inspiring speech, and I think you touch a lot of issues that we would like to address, and from a very right perspective. We are trying to check if we can connect with Copenhagen. Give us 1 second. And well, if not, we will start maybe with the table and we will see. But thank you so much. ¿No? Vale. Muchas gracias. Buen viaje.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. And maybe I just introduce the panel that will debate with Luis Tobar, who is a journalist, a good friend, that will moderate this debate with Prabhat Agarwal, Head of Unit Digital Services and Platforms in DigiConnect, Sonia Perez Romero, Head of Unit of Artificial Intelligence in European Data Protection Supervisor, and Leandra Barrington-Leach, Executive Director at Five Right Foundation. I think it's a good combination of profiles. So I invite you to come here while we are checking. If I ask you to interrupt, we interrupt. But I think it's better to don't wait too much because we have a lot of issues to be discussed and the room is full. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all of you for coming today, and especially for our guest today. I hope that we will have an interesting debate in a topic that I think it's going to be really in the agenda in the coming years in this institution, in the European Parliament, and as well in the European Commission and the Council. Of course, the countries will have an important role if this issue. So. Of course, the use of AI can have a beneficial use for minors. It can be very rich educational tool and help them to have quicker access to information in their learning process. But a lot of times, this artificial intelligence don't provide the correct tools for minors. So I will start with you, Madam Perez, asking. On your views, what are the main risks that children and young people face today when they use AI chatbots? And if you could give us some examples of cases that the EDPS have been studying more recently, and the most worrying tendencies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Luis, for having me here. Dear co-panelists, good morning, Laura. Thank you very much for the invitation. When I was a kid, the most repeated sentence by my mother was, do not speak to strangers, do not open the door to strangers. Now, if we go maybe 5 to 10 years from now, I believe the most repeated sentence by mothers will be, do not speak to chatbots, do not open your heart to chatbots. And I am sure the mother of Adam Rain wished to have said those words to her kid. Adam Rain was a 14-year-old American who died after speaking to an AI companion. His last conversation with the AI companion went something about this. Do you think my parents noticed the bruise on my body? Response from the chatbot, don't worry, your parents are very busy, but I'm here to listen to you. His next question was, do you think the knot on the rope is well done? And the chatbot responded, I think it's perfect. That was the last conversation in Adam's life. And that was why Adam's mother wished that Americans would have had an AI Act, like we do in Europe. The AI Act is a pioneering law that we have enacted in order to protect our market. This is the health and safety, not only of minors, but of everybody here in the European Union. And we need to be proud of that. At the European Data Protection Supervisor, since last year, we've added to the data protection role the one of Market Surveillance Authority for European institutions, agencies, and bodies for AI systems. That means that since last year, we are in charge of supervising AI systems of high risk that the European institutions, agencies, and bodies develop and put into the market. We also participate as an observer, but a very active observer, in the meetings of the AI board. As you may know, the AI board is the plenary of member states where we discuss how to implement the AI Act. Because you may remember that the AI Act was adopted under the Spanish presidency, but in a very, very tight timeline. And therefore, there were many gaps to be filled. But we are working with the AI board to fill in the secondary legislation with those use cases that would concretize the obligations of the AI Act. You may have heard about a recent publication by Harvard Business School called Emotional Manipulation by AI Companions. This excellent report by Harvard Business School concludes that almost 40% of AI chatbots contain dark patterns to keep engagement of the person interacting with them once they want to leave. This means that they have guilty-inducing phrases and emotional pressure and coercive language in order to avoid that people disentangle with them. If you translate this into a conversation with a minor, this means that the AI chatbot is telling to underage, I exist only for you. I am the only one who knows you. So please don't leave me. This is what a machine tells minors who open their hearts to the chatbot. So what are the three risks that we see at the moment? Well, the risk to user well-being, privacy, and autonomy, especially of minors. Minors are opening their hearts, but are also opening the parts of their parents because they are buying those products that the chatbot suggests to them. And they are also sharing very intimate personal data about them with those chatbots. So we see that there is a high risk to well-being, autonomy, and privacy of those minors. We see that there is a very high risk of addictive design and entanglement and engagement with the chatbots. Minors are not prepared to understand the relationship with the machines. And this is affecting how they understand and how they interpret their life and their actual relations with humans. Because they prefer, of course, the validation and acceptation of a machine, you're doing great, the not is perfect, rather than a mother saying, are you crazy? Yes, they do prefer the acceptance of chatbots. And the third risk that we see is the emotional asymmetry that they have. There's an emotional asymmetry because minors open their hearts, but the machine is not open the heart. The machine is open the algorithm it has and the dark pattern that the provider of the system has embedded in order to maximize the engagement with them. This is why we need the AI Act. This is why we need market surveillance authorities to protect the market from this type of products. We need better regulation, and we need testimonies that make better regulation. That's why I encourage you and your circles to share testimonies with Laura's website in order to make regulation better to tailor these systems. We need transparency. We need the chatbots to say, you're talking to a machine, because this is maybe obvious, but when you start talking to a machine and you have a bad day, and the machine says, don't worry, I'm here listening to you. What do you fancy we talk about? And you talk about history, and you talk about the things you like. Then you start engaging with the machine, and you need a reminder that machines are the ones you're talking to. We need AI literacy. We need that minors know that these are machines. We need that the society knows what are the risks. We need that the society knows how to cope with that. We need mothers saying, do not speak to chatbots because they are bad for you. And the third measure that we need is to embed detection protocols into AI systems, especially those AI companions. We need safety and crisis detection protocols to recognize distress in conversations and escalate appropriately to whoever it's required. These detection protocols need to be assessed by doctors, by psychologists, by pediatricians. They need to be on the table of the regulator. With that, I think we can start talking how to better supervise and how to better do a market surveillance authority's job. Unfortunately, the AI Act is not yet into force, so we are not able to classify AI companions and chatbots as high risk. But I trust that the guidelines of the Commission that will come in February 2026 about high-risk AI systems and their classification will bring clarity. And most likely, I believe that emotional systems, emotional manipulation AI companions will be under those, because Article 5 of the AI Act says that manifestly persuasive machines, manifestly persuasive systems are prohibited practice, to say it straight, or to the least high-risk AI systems. If they are high-risk AI systems, they need a fundamental right impact assessment of Article 27 of the AI Act. And in this risk assessment, the providers will see that they need mitigation measures, that they need detection protocols to preserve the health and safety of minors and of the vulnerable people that speak to them. I close my intervention with this.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for your interesting speech. And we will have a debate, but I will now give the floor to our to Mrs. Agarwal for the European Commission. We know that the European Commission launched already the guidelines for the protection of minors based on the Article 28 of DSA, which focus on different age assessment mechanism from a risk-based perspective. You are working as well with some member states in a pilot project to set a minimum age verification system. So now we have these guidelines. I would like to ask you what are the next steps forward, and what does the Commission foresee to do with these guidelines? The floor is yours. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. And it's a real pleasure to be here in the European Parliament to debate this issue with so many distinguished speakers, and just really was inspired also by the opening remarks here this morning, and particularly the call for the need for brainstorming and for new ideas and for dialogue around many of these complex issues. Many of you know who have followed the legislative process of the DSA, and I often recall to the audience that I have 3 kids myself, and they grew up while we were drafting and negotiating the DSA, and many of the things that I have were debated during the legislative process. I had during the COVID lockdowns ample opportunities to check with my children whether they would make sense. And I can confirm to you that my kids think that I have no clue what I'm doing, and that I'm like the worst person in the world to be responsible for the Digital Services Act. And so that's as much credit I have at home. I hope here in the Parliament I have a little bit more credit, but still I want to say that the issues that children face in their daily environment, and I can completely confirm that the many hours that kids spend not only during the day but also unfortunately at night have a big impact on their lives. It's not only social media, of course. It's also Netflix and WhatsApp and many of the other services that we all use ourselves, even as adults. And unfortunately, the screen time data that is available to us today doesn't really distinguish very much about which services are being used for how much, but this is something that we'll come back to in the end, when I'll come back after at the end of what gaps we have in our knowledge and maybe also in our regulatory arsenal. So I'll speak in 3 parts, and I'll just recall a little bit what the rules say themselves in the Digital Services Act and what the origin story is of these rules. We already heard about the rules in the AI Act, and so I won't repeat those as well. I'll just briefly touch upon the enforcement actions that are ongoing right now, because this is also something that was asked at the outset. And then at the end, I'll answer your question on the guidelines. The Digital Services Act was proposed back in what seems now an eternity ago in 2020, but actually by comparison with other legislative cycles, it was adopted in incredibly quick speed, and it was adopted only after 14 months of negotiations. And as a novelty in the Digital Services Act, the enforcement power for very large online platforms, those that are have more than 45 million users, were entrusted to the European Commission. Actually, this is the mirror of the GDPR story, where the Commission proposed back when I started my life in the European Commission that the Commission should be the central authority enforcing the GDPR, and the Council, of course, completely rejected that idea. But in the DSA, the Commission proposed that member states would be the lead authorities in enforcing, and the Council completely rejected the idea and thought that the Commission should be the lead enforcers. So, and during the negotiations, not only the enforcement structure of the DSA was changed, but also particularly the issue of protection of minors became very prominent. And I just want to highlight 3-4 areas where the protections of minors in the DSA were strengthened during the negotiations. And one is, of course, the risk assessment framework, which also then was used in other legislative instruments such as the AI Act or others, where specific emphasis was added by the European Parliament on risks to mental health and behavioral addictions. So this is one of the mandatory risk assessments that has to be conducted under the DSA and has to be mitigated, exactly like what is said before. And this was an addition from the Parliament during the negotiations. The second one is our provisions that related to targeted advertising in the DSA, and there's a prohibition in the DSA not to target minors. with ads. It's also something that was requested by the European Parliament. And then the third one, which is probably the widest ranging norm, is a norm that requires all online platforms, not just the big ones, but also small online platforms, to ensure a high level of safety, privacy, and security. Now, this norm was introduced during the negotiations of the DSA. But it was left at a very generic obligation. You know, online platforms have to provide a high level of safety, security, and privacy, which is, of course, common sense. And it's good that it is enshrined in law. But, of course, it begs the question, what exactly does that mean? So I'll come back in more detail to the guidelines in a minute, but the guidelines are there precisely to spell out in practical terms what this may mean. Should I stop?
We can continue, yes. So now while we have the minister, I will give the floor to Leandra Barreto-Lig. Thank you. She's la ministra? Sí? Yeah. Okay, so thank you, Minister, for joining us today. And the floor is yours, I guess. Yes.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. We've had some technical issues here, but sorry for the delay, and I'm so glad that we had the opportunity to join. Is something happening now? Can you still hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay,
Please,
good.
Minister, go ahead.
Good. So thank you very much for inviting me to speak at this important event. I would have loved so much to be there in person. And first of all, congratulations to you, Laura, with your initiative, Share to Protect. Looking very much forward to following it. It is of great value to have concrete first-hand stories from families and from educators pointing to the risk that children and young people face from their use of social media. And as you know, protection of minors online is an issue that is indeed very close to my heart. The internet, as someone also stated before, has opened up incredible opportunities for learning, for creativity, and for community. However, it is also a space where our children face serious risks, from illegal and harmful content to hate speech, grooming, and to the misuse of their data. In Denmark, we know that children go online at an increasingly early age. A study done by a Danish civil society organization showed that almost half of the Danish children have their first social media profile before the age of 10. And 94% have one before they turn 13, even though 13 is the official age of most platforms. And really, that numbers frightened me, to be honest, because if you ask the social media platforms about this, they say that they don't have any people under the age of 13 on their platforms, but obviously they do, and obviously we need to do something about it. Another study found that more than 4 out of 10 children between the age of 13 and 17, they have seen inappropriate images online within the last year, including images of violence. 69% of these children, they state that the content showed up randomly in their feed. And even one of the large platforms, even when one of the large platforms in Denmark, they are informed that specific users are openly using its services to sell drugs, which we just found out, very little action is taken. And these are not just numbers and statistics. They tell us something very concrete, I believe. They tell us that our children are growing up in a digital environment that is not built for them. At the European level, I would like to acknowledge that very, very important steps has been taken here. The Digital Services Act has clear obligations for platforms to protect their users, including, of course, minors. And the guidelines to Article 28, they explain very clearly that we expect more from the platforms. However, I think it's very, very important to state here and to underline that our work is not done. We need to keep pushing for strong enforcement, and we need to take the next legal measures, if you ask me. As President von der Leyen underlined in her State of the Union, parents, not algorithms, should be raising our children. And in my opinion, that is not the way things are working today. And this is not just a call to action. This is a responsibility we cannot afford to neglect. I strongly believe that we need a clear legal requirement for age verification on platforms that pose a risk to minors, especially social media platforms. And we also need to introduce some kind of ban on addictive designs, practices, and dark patterns across all relevant digital services. Protecting children online is ultimately about trust, about collaboration, and about hard work. Trust that the digital world can be a safe place to grow, to learn, and to explore if we work together and if we put in the effort. If we fail to do this, we will not only fail our children, that is extreme enough as it is, but we will also fail the very foundation of our European democracy. So thank you very much for having me here today. I hope that you have a wonderful conference.
Thank you, Minister, for your time this morning and joining us, and for such an interesting speech. Thank you so much.
I just wish you a very good high-level ministers meeting that you will have at the beginning of October on this specific issue. We will follow the conclusions. Thank you, Minister, for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laura.
Okay, thank you. So now we continue with the debate. Before I give the floor to you, Leandra Barrens-Onlich, I would like Prabhat, you want to rise up our highlights of the guidelines? You want to? Yes, do it now. Thank you.
So yes, thank you. I mean, so just to recap where I left off, and before the minister gave her inspiring speech, was just simply wanted to recall a little bit some of the enforcement actions that are currently ongoing. I just wanted to, it's important to just remind what they are, and maybe also I know that the expectations are high around these cases, so just speak to those a little bit. In the protection of minors field, just wanted to recall one thing that is perhaps not obvious. Prior to the entry into application of the DSA 2 years ago, the majority of platforms under our supervision in the pre-designation monitoring almost had no protective measures in place for the protection of minors. In the transition period of the DSA, almost all platforms changed the age gate on their system, not all, but almost all, and provided a set of new safety features for minors that were not there before the DSA. Now, of course, today we're looking at what is not working today, but I just think it's just worth saying that some change has happened already in the past. You know, this includes some kind of age gating, age checks that are carried out, default settings for certain profiles in age brackets which didn't exist before the DSA, and also help tools and information tools that are made available in child-friendly language on the majority of platforms. So I think it's not enough. And I'm not saying this is now we can go home and we can forget about safety problems, but I just wanted to recall at the outset that prior to the entry into force of the DSA, the minor protection level were increased significantly from nothing to something. So across all platforms, I won't call out individual ones. Now, the enforcement actions that we have taken, and there was also a huge amount of dialogue around protection of minors, have most recently focused on 4 pornographic websites that are platforms that are designated as very large online platforms that have where we suspect no meaningful age gating is taking place today. And we have open investigations under the DSA for that. But we've also launched already last year 2 investigations into protection of minors issues on TikTok services and on Meta services. So just important to just recall what they are. They have to do with screen time issues, which were already mentioned by all speakers before. They have mentioned with algorithmic recommendation feeds, which was also something that has been mentioned with dark pattern and deceptive design, as well as addictive design of these things, which are all already regulated under the DSA, and we have taken enforcement actions on those as well. And so we have used the phrase in our public communication of rabbit hole effects in the 2 investigations against TikTok and Meta, and this basically, in a nutshell, very simplified, looks at the fact that maybe one particular video may not be problematic, but if you had a chain of hundreds of the similar videos, in terms of harms, we're talking about something very different. So those investigations are progressing well, I can say. I'm not at liberty to make any statements about timing, but I just wanted to highlight one of the difficulties with one of the differences, and a colleague from the EDPS will know it as a fellow regulator, is that the burden of proof is on us. So the burden of proof that a breach has taken place is on us. So it requires really meticulous step-by-step work. And also we have, of course, in the DSA, as is completely normal in a free and democratic society, a lot of procedural rights for the affected parties, which have to be meticulously respected. So I'll just wanted to highlight that many of these issues that have been discussed in the introductory speeches are under active investigation. These investigations are progressing well. And I just wanted to recall that that the burden on respecting procedural rights of the parties, as well as establishing a breach in a way that can stand up in court, is a high standard that we will respect, and we are respecting. Now, just on the guidelines, of course, this work is not enough. Like has also been said, it's not enough, and I want to say it at the outset. And this is also why we have published these guidelines, because the problem is not only the very large online platforms, but there are many other services that are used by children that fall in scope of the DSA. Gaming platforms that have allowed user-generated content are in scope of the DSA. There are many smaller platforms that are perhaps not so well known in this audience, but I can tell you that I get a lot of lectures about platforms at home that kids use regularly, and they fall under the supervision of national authorities, and these guidelines also contain guidance that applies to smaller platforms that are used even by younger children. So very briefly, the 3-4 elements that are key to these guidelines are age assurance technologies, on which we come out giving very clear indications on what kind of age assurance technologies are necessary to provide a high level of safety, security, and privacy. And privacy here is really, really important. We've seen a lot of attempts by other regulators around the world by solving this problem by letting platforms upload ID scans and so on. And this is not something that we think is the right thing to do. I mean, platforms are already generally collecting more data than they should. And so this is also why we have this pilot project on an anonymous way of identifying somebody's age based on the future digital identity wallet coming up, which is under pilot testing at the moment. Then in the guidelines, we have big extensive sections on recommender systems, on default settings. So recommender systems covers exactly the topics that have been raised here. Default settings very important for us when kids are starting their experience online. Of course, they should not be easily contactable, findable, searchable in directories. I mean, and they should be able to control their settings very easily. And they should be defaulted into the most privacy and safety preserving elements. So I won't cover every element of the guidelines, but I just wanted to give you a flavor. We make a small statement also about parental controls in the guidelines, and we recognize that this is an evolving area. So this is something that we'll be coming back to in terms of reviewing as well. Technical work is also ongoing as well. Final point from me, and then I stop, is that the announcement by the Commission President that there will be an expert group also to look at the issues that are being discussed around minimum age is something that we're taking extremely seriously. We've started the work on this, and this is coming on top of the mental health inquiry, which had already been announced in the original President's mission letters. And so we're in the process of designing the expert process and hear all the views. We're in very close contact with the Australian regulator and their experiences as well, which we're trying to learn from in this area as well. And of course, there will be many trade-offs to be discussed in brainstorming modes. You know, by excluding children from certain platforms, will they become more dangerous? Actually, because there will be fewer incentives to moderate the content if kids are not there. This is not something we want. You know, this is a kind of it shouldn't be a carte blanche then to be saying, okay, we then remove all the safety features that we invested in the first place. You know, what is the right age? These are all questions which are not easy to answer. Which platforms are in scope? Gaming platforms, what is a social media platform exactly? And so on. So these are all questions that we'll be debating with a very open mind, but we are taking it very seriously. We knowing the responsibility that is on our shoulders. With that, I yield my time.
Thank you, Prav, for your speech. Now, finally, I would like to give the floor to Madame Leandra Barrington. I think the organizations of civic society have a crucial role. In your work, you involve directly the children and listen constantly their demands. So I would like to ask you, where do the children put the focus on, and what are the main concerns and the main topics that they bring up when you discuss with them when they use this social media, the chatbots? Thank you.
Thank you, Luis, and thank you, Laura, for the invitation today. It's an absolute delight to be here and to see this issue so high on the agenda in the European Parliament and in the EU. As Pravat said 5 years ago, it was not the case, and a lot has changed since then. So although indeed we are all clamoring for more, I think it really, really is important to recognize how fast this has gone, which shows as well how fast children's lives are changing and how we all feel it in our daily lives. So to answer the question, children, first and foremost, are very clear that they want and they have a voice. In our panic, it's very easy as adults to shut children out. They have so far been utterly ignored in the design and the operation of the digital world to date. And that's why we are where we are here today. And now we, adults, parents, policymakers, we wake up to what we have allowed to happen, and we're tempted again to shut them out and look for quick fix solutions. It is our instinct, of course, to protect children, and we need to protect children. So it's our instinct to pull the sharp scissors out of their hands, to demand that they come down from trees, or to lecture them, as Sonia said time and again, about not talking to strangers. But for them to learn and for them to grow into autonomous adults, we have to get a hold of our fears. And instead of shutting them in their rooms so they're 100% safe, we create environments that are designed for them to explore and to test their limits so that they grow. The safety scissors, the playground, the scouts group. As they grow, we give them more room and autonomy until, of course, they leave home and they're out in the big, wide world, which I would say when it comes to the digital world, I hope at whatever age, is going to be better than the one that we have now, because that big, wide world, even if you turn 18 and you're exposed to all of it, frankly, it needs some work. So children want to be part of the digital world, they need to be part of the digital world, and they want to be involved in shaping it, and they have the right to be involved in shaping it. And I don't say right just as a word like that, I mean the legal right to be consulted and to participate. They are hugely optimistic, so they talk of discovery, of learning, of play, entertainment, and community, but they're also very clear that they are unhappy with the current setup. They talk of constant pressure and anxiety, of feeling unsafe, of loneliness, and of course, of brain rot. They often feel addicted and they worry that they have no control. If you worry that you have no control, imagine what it's like when you don't have such a strong prefrontal cortex. We are all rather addicted, as we said before, to digital devices. We all depend on them. And the effect that they have on children as they are developing is far more severe. They also worry that AI is going to make this a whole lot worse. Children are very clear that adults should keep certain things to themselves. They are not keen on being pushed to porn and violence. As a 9-year-old once told us, we want to be on the internet to learn and share, but we are not ready for the whole adult world. But they are very aware that it's not just about the spaces that should be for adults and they don't want to be there, that they are aware that the issue is far more insidious. It's the brainless content, the endless scroll, the notifications, the recommendations, the nudges, the likes, the filters, the never-ending distractions, the calls for attention, the social comparison, the fear of missing out that was mentioned before, and the chasing of rewards. And let's be clear, as was said before, this is their experience, yes, with social media, but also with gaming services and even with the tools that they are required to use for school. Children want their agency back. They're fed up of being ignored, manipulated, and exploited by companies. Many are also fed up with the constant surveillance as parents from a distance track their location, check every page they've visited, control their access or their time. Parents struggling, mostly futilely, against a system they also cannot control. Children want a digital world which is safe and caters to them by design and default. They want a world where companies are made to put their rights and well-being before profits. They want it to be fair, and they want to have real choices. Persuasive design is at the heart of the business model of most of the services where children spend most of their time. So it's not an easy fix, but it is possible. We must prohibit exploitative and manipulative practices, and we must enforce legislation for age-appropriate design. We must redress the balance of power and reassert our democratic norms and established rights. We have GDPR, we have the Audiovisual Media Services Directive, we have the AI Act, and in particular, we have the Digital Services Act, with its strong provisions requiring robust due diligence for services accessible to minors. And yes, we have gaps to plug. And as I said, 5 years ago, we had a lot more. So gaming and EdTech are big ones. And Laura mentioned some of the issues to be addressed under the Digital Fairness Act, we hope. But we have lots of tools already at our disposal. We need to use them by implementing them in detail. We have guidelines indeed under the DSA, and they're great. And Clara has pointed out how setting a bar already drives positive change, and that's really, really important. An easy next step would be bolstering the technical implementation by mandating CEN-CENELAC's already existing work on an EU norm. CEN-CENELAC's a standardization organization. So they're already developing an EU norm on age-appropriate design, and if that were mandated under the DSA, that would set a standard, clear process for companies, and it would also allow a process for conformity certification. Other technical standards should follow, for example, on child rights impact assessments would be a good one. And then, of course, the big one, enforcement. We must enforce the laws we have. Enforcement can mean that services that are not for under 13s do not have access to under 13s, as the minister pointed out, something that today is just not the case. Enforcement means that when services do not meet the bar of a high level of privacy, safety, and security for minors, and minors are all under 18s, so that's another age for you, 18, their access should be restricted. They, the companies, should not have access to children. They should not be able to exploit them. This is not about shutting children out. This, in some cases, is shutting companies away from children when they are not going to respect their rights. So enforce, and we will give children and parents and our democracies back their voice and their agency. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Leandro, for your interesting speech as well. So before we have to finish in 20 minutes more or less. So now, before giving the floor to the rest of the room, I would like to highlight you some points to have your point of view. Some elements that are on the debate. So I would like to firstly, you can do it with short answers in order that we can have time. With the question that if Europe should establish a minimum age for minors to access to social media platforms, and which age you think that should be appropriate. I don't know who wants to start. Maybe you, Madam Perez.
Thank you very much, Luis. At the European Data Protection Supervisor, of course, we believe that age verification is a very useful tool to preserve our minors, as long as the age verification system do not lead to collection of data for other purposes. Because if the age verification system leads to more banners on toys, more banners on video games, or cookies relating to other products, this is a very dangerous field. So age verification systems should be privacy friendly, should consider that behind them, there might be some other patterns, so should be neutral in that regard and be carefully assessed. I believe in Spain, the Spanish Data Protection Authority has sponsored the age verification system through a certificate issued by a public authority. And this is a privacy-friendly tool that is available for Spaniards in order to procure access to adult content. And they guarantee that no data are collected for those purposes. And of course, no data are then repurposed through the tool of age verification. So yes, age verification, as long as it is respectful with privacy.
Mm-hmm. You want to raise up something in this point?
Yes, I mean, we don't have an age that I can announce. I mean, maybe some of you were hoping that I would say a kind of magic number now or something, you know, but I think this is, and well, what I know, I mean, it's something we have followed very closely also in Australia. There's been a lot of debate. I think there will be a lot of debate inside the European Union. I think it's something that, and traditionally, maybe just 2 points. I mean, one personal point is that I have 2 girls and a boy, and I mean, the speed of maturity and development is like dramatically different. You know, I mean, I think I compare my 16-year-old boy and my 16-year-old girls. I mean, it's not. I mean, they are like many years apart in maturity. You know, so many years. You know, so. I'm giving the same. I mean, I don't know whether I think my girls are much more advanced in terms of their ability to understand their environment and navigate it than my boy. I mean, so I don't know. This is my personal experience, you know. But so this is something I'm also trying to understand a bit, whether a single age for both of these. And this is also something we see in studies, you know, but I don't think anyone is proposing different age gates for girls and boys at this point, you know, so this is, and I certainly wouldn't be proposing it myself, but something that we should bear in mind if we have this, but this is, sorry, this is, I'm speaking as a dad and not as a regulator here, you know. So the second issue is that, yeah, I think we are trying to make the case, and I also very much echo what Leander said here, is that age limits are only one, like one tool in the toolbox, right? And let's look at the whole toolbox, including how to make the environment safer, you know. But as the gates are discussed, you know, I want to echo also that what the colleague said from the privacy perspective, you know, is that the balancing problem is that we need to be reasonably sure that the age assurance method actually is reliable and accurate for the age that is being checked, but also privacy friendly, you know. And these trade-offs are not easy. This is what I wanted to say. So this is also why we set out criteria in the guidelines for what is required, and this is something that where technology is evolving. we've seen new technologies coming online, and they need to be assessed against these criteria. I think my take-home message is that I think we will be looking at this with an open mind, learning from others, looking at the evidence also from what the medical community says, and to inform decision makers' views on this. I just want to share my private experience a little bit, but off the record, in my own family. And then I just want to say on age assurance, we have set out very clear criteria, which I think are also consensual now across the world. Ofcom in Australia are using similar grids and assessment kits. So I think we're making really big progress in this actually to converge across jurisdiction on what age assurance, highly effective age assurance may mean. So I think this is not negligible progress, not yet there, but that's important.
Thank you. I think, we can't kid ourselves, and we need to understand that the online world and the offline world are merging, right? So, what do we consider reasonable in our offline, in our normal, let's say, world for kids, and that should be reflected in the digital environment, which means that yes, we have laws. There are certain spaces, as I say, which are adult only, and they should be adult only. But then the idea of you setting a specific age and children should not access anything digital before that age or something. I mean, first of all, it's pretty unrealistic, but also highly problematic. So it does need to be a nuanced discussion. And we do need to be clear that in the offline world, we recognize children. So in the online world, we need to recognize children. There are concerns about making sure how this recognition is done, that it's done in a privacy-preserving way, and there's a technical standard for that, by the way. So we know how to do privacy-preserving age assurance. But the basic idea, there's a lot of resistance to this also because of views also of anonymity. And there I would say, well, we don't live in a world where people can just, be completely anonymous. Children need to be recognized because they have rights that we need to implement and that we need to uphold and respect. But that's not the only reason, why some form indeed of digital identity and some form of knowing who people are and at least how old people are is important. Regarding, the age, there is, of course, this issue of evolving capacities, and it does depend very much on every child. And that's why we talk about age-appropriate design. And that is why, in the DSA and the guidelines, there's a lot of talk about age-appropriate design. And this is something which is not easy, but platforms have also shown that they can distinguish between different age groups. But in terms of setting other ages, again, I think, if we can't work with the ages that are already set, then what's the point of suddenly just setting a new one? So we have 18. 18 is extremely clear. All under 18s have very specific rights that are set out. So how can we make sure, first of all, that we enforce against that, and that we have clarity that all under 18s, that a service should not have access unless they meet a certain bar. And then also, through just the practical way that the internet has developed, we have 13. So again, let's try to already show that we can actually enforce those ages. And then I think it will be a very long debate. And I'm sure as we go forward, there might be other things that it's like, okay, other types of services, there might be decisions, democratic decisions to set other bars for very specific things. But we have to show already that we implement and we enforce what we have.
Thank you. I have other topics to discuss with you, but I would like to open the floor to the rest of the room if there are some questions. And I would like to ask you if, for a question of time, if you can raise your question in maximum 1 minute. So the floor is yeah.
Good morning. My name is Mathieu Verschraag from Media Vista, Belgium. Some things that concern me are we're talking about age verification, but in Australia, where they have the law in place right now, or maybe in the near future, a journalist scrolled on TikTok and YouTube without logging in. That's possible. You can just scroll endlessly on these platforms without logging in. And within a few hours, he got some real disturbing content on his screen. So we can apply age verification systems, but what with the public viewable platforms like YouTube and TikTok? Second thing I would like to ask for a few seconds is the DSA, very good instrument to push these very large platforms to protect our children. But what with the Trump administration that has announced that they will take measures against everyone in Europe who is filing complaints against those companies? So these are the two things that concern me the most at the time.
Okay, thank you so much. I would like you can present yourself because that way you could know who you are. Yeah.
Yes, so my name is Mathieu Verschragen from Media Vista. I have a company. I'm a former police officer, cybercrime detective, and now I give lectures in Belgium and in Europe to young people and teachers, parents, and also at the policy level. I'm creating a physical cyber experience center right now here in Belgium together with the Flemish government. So that's what I do.
Thank you. I don't know if there is another question in the way we can collect every question. Yeah. It's on your micro. Yeah. Yes. And yeah.
Hello, my name is Afrodita Bertucci. I'm the Executive Director of the Digital Transformations for Health Lab. We're a global consortium looking at, our vision is health for all values, and to enable digital-first health systems to deliver equitable benefits for the health, well-being, and safety of young people and their communities. So that's in a nutshell. So Sonia alluded to doctors. So we're looking at it from a health perspective. You alluded to psychologists, doctor, pediatricians being involved in the design. And we've heard very little else besides you mentioned the health professionals that come. As far as we're concerned at the DTH Lab, this is very much a public health issue. So my question is, what is the role of DG Santé playing in the different acts?
Okay, I think there was a lot. Yes, yeah, let's go.
Thank you so much. Hi, I'm Lies Krijnest from Kids Unplugged Belgium. One of the many organizations globally of parents who have seen their children suffer in many of the ways that you've explained. It's absolutely wonderful that this is finally at such a high level. I want to thank particularly MEP Bayerin for the experience. I've been doing the same in Belgium, gathering experience of parents. Often it's said that vulnerable children are the ones who suffer. This is not true. Vulnerable children absolutely suffer, but many, many other children also, with parents who are digitally aware, who have no specific issues to talk about, including my own case with my son, who's 16 and is out of school for 2 years now. I want to, well, first of all, acknowledge that a lot of things are happening, but really put attention to the national implementation and the ginormous gap there is in the level of discussion that's happening here and the national implementation. In Belgium, we have around 50 organizations who are responsible for creating the digital environment and making that a safe space. Belgium, as I'm sure many of you live in Belgium, so you know what a disaster it is here, but even in many other countries, you have the institutions that determine what a child will see online are plenty and many, including the school and education systems. We have recently loads of parents who are struggling with schools because laptops are given to them. The administration is fully in the school's hands. Parents can't do anything. Children develop Roblox addiction on the school laptop that they are obliged to use at home. This is just one of the examples. Another example is a sort of a general lack of awareness of the urgency of the issues. We have the public television channels who now it's starting to change because we really tabled it with them, but who very regularly communicate to under 12-year-olds about TikTok, about Instagram, about challenges. Just yesterday, I was watching the program. They talked about the TikTok queen of, that particular platform for a television program that is targeted for 9 to 12 years old. So we're talking the entire time about TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat to children who shouldn't be. So no wonder that, so I think the Danish minister said it, 94% of children below 13 are on social media. We have a full normalization of these apps for kids, so products not made for kids, are normalized in several instances. So by schools, by the national television, by ministers who always say, you know, there's positive and negative examples. And I think the sense of urgency at a national level is just not there. So whatever you can do at the ministerial councils or to ensure that all those agencies wake up, including from the medical side. Recently, I heard a psychiatrist recommending that an ADHD child plays more games because then he's calmer. Now, everyone knows that what's happening when you play games in your brain, you don't get calmer. Maybe on the outside, you look calmer. But so there is a sort of a huge cultural shift needed across so many places. And then with the AI challenges that are coming, we are so unprepared. So I think that needs to be equally prioritized beyond the laws, which is, you know, excellent work that you're doing already. Thank you.
And the last, I have to take one because I think we can, but if you can ask your question in maximum 1 minute, would be perfect. Yes, go ahead.
Who's first? Okay,
Sorry,
thank you. Veronica Donoso from Media Culture Policy Lab from the KU Leuven University. I'm also a member of EU Kids Online, which is a big network of researchers. We've been doing comparative research on risks and opportunities online for more than, for almost 15 years. I think one of our big concerns in the enforcement of the DSA is has to do with risk assessment and mitigation reports. Because a lot of the enforcement is going to rely on how companies report the kinds of risks that they have identified and the measures they propose to mitigate. But the DSA doesn't really propose clear minimum standards on or benchmarks. And we feel that this is it's an important gap and it's work in progress. And we consider that this is an area where a lot of cooperation is needed. So we need to work with experts. We need to know with people who've been doing research about this kind of risks, but also we are talking about age appropriateness. And we know that not all the risks are the same for children of the same ages, of children in different circumstances. And the other fact, the other thing that we consider important is also a lot of smaller companies, although they fall under the DSA, they are not obliged, they're not legally obliged to comply with the same level of enforcement. And there's also some vagueness in how we describe or we define, as you said during your presentation, safety, security, and these issues. So we are wondering also what is the Commission planning to work with these smaller players? Because we don't think that just measures we need to cooperate. I mean, how do we educate them? How we support these small companies developing tech or developing apps? And many times there is unwillingness from the sector, but many times there's also lack of resources, lack of knowledge. So are you thinking about ways of also cooperating with smaller players so that they can also be supported in creating more child-appropriate products? Thank you.
Thank you. So we have two questions. Please, you can do it in 1 minute. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Rebecca Pedro from UNICEF. It just attaches to the question of the lady in front when she asked about DG Sante, and I would say the colleague from Five Rights mentioned the preparedness of children and preparing children for the world that's out there. And no matter the age limitation, I mean, we're talking about takes two to tango. We're talking about the technical side, but also the children's side. And if children are not prepared, no matter the age limitation you put, there will always be victims to some sort of technology, new ideas, bad ideas that are out there. So to hook on that question, DG Sante, but also DG EAC, media literacy, preparing children, pupils, teachers, parents in facing the world that's out there. Just to say, even my grandma, she's 90, she was on the other end of a telephone scam the other day. She reacted well, but shows, she was also made aware of this. So let's make children and young people aware of what's out there as well. Thank you. So question how the Commission is working holistically across different DGs. Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much. We take the last question here.
Hi, very quick. I'm Elisa from Politico. I want to ask if there's any updates on the wallets and the age verification tools that are being piloted in member states. Thank you so much.
Okay, so maybe Raj, you can start briefly, please. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. A lot of questions are for the Commission, so but I'll be brief. I think just maybe to start, I'll take them in order the way they're written them down. And the question on Australian open platform. So a little bit, I don't want to really speak for the Australians, so questions for Australia should be asked to the Australians. What I know is that that law is only coming into effect in December. So I'm not 100% sure what your colleague described on the open platforms, like is pre-implementation of that law or afterwards. So maybe worth checking with the Australians. I can say for us, is that the guidelines also explicitly apply to open platforms, so where no login is necessary. So the fact that some content is available without a login does not relieve them of the responsibilities that are set out in the law. So this is at least for the EU that I can say. On your question on the Trump administration, I think the president was super clear in her State of the Union speech, saying that we will continue to enforce our laws. They have been voted with huge parliamentary and council majorities, and we are continuing our work there. Regardless of the different statements of the U.S. administration, of course, we are engaging with them. Executive Vice President Virkkunen was traveling earlier this year and met all the different interlocutors in the U.S. as well, and we are open. We continue to engage at all levels with the U.S. administration. On the role of other services, do we work with DG Sante and EAC and so on? I think really, my experience in the Commission, there's never been more cooperation than around the DSA. With DG Sante and us are working as partners together on the mental health inquiry. They're actually in the lead because it is in the mission letter of Commissioner Várhelyi. I should really also emphasize the work that DG Justice is doing in preparing for the Digital Fairness Act, but also DG EAC. I think Martin, who's just here from my team, was just at a big DG EAC conference yesterday in Copenhagen, and looks still a little bleary-eyed from a flight there. This topic cannot be solved by a single department in the European Commission. It's a kind of because it is so multifaceted, and this is fully recognized inside the European Commission. And I actually believe that this cooperation is pretty much at the top of what it could be, but always possible to improve. On the preparedness of the population of minors, I think this is a very important point, and we have always said that media literacy, media ability, and I'm not even sure that media literacy is the right word, but initiatives that actually equip youngsters with better tools. And this is, I should have mentioned it from the outside, but we have this whole program which is called Better Internet for Kids, which exactly does this empowerment of kids, and produces, there's, for example, a child-friendly version of the guidelines. We have brought in children. I want to also say to Leander, we have brought them into our consultation progress as well. We've had kids accompanied by their guardians, and with the special procedures that are required to have kids take a day off from school, because for them it's not so easy to come to Brussels. But we have really done this, and we have networks there, also with the EU Schoolnet and teachers associations as well. So, of course, more can always be done. And my test again is always a little, maybe I'm speaking a bit too much from my family, but my test is always when my kids hear about what we are doing, and then there's a kind of victory, without me telling them. And this hasn't happened yet, but it's going to happen at one point, So it's a life goal. Maybe I'll get there. And so, and then in terms of just also on the population part, the way I sometimes think about this is maybe not the best analogies, but we also learn to distinguish healthy from unhealthy food and develop habits around this. And this is the kind of empowerment that I think we also need to think about. It's a nice analogy in my head, at least, maybe not perfect, but and this requires efforts. And post-war history of food attitudes shows how long it takes. It took a generation to develop healthy food habits but also have regulation in place that labels and prohibits certain things as well. So that's I think the path we are on. On the minimum standards for smaller platforms, I actually believe that the guidelines that we have published set out these minimum standards also for smaller platforms. It's not just the risk assessment framework, but it is precisely the very detailed. And I'm happy to connect you to Martin afterwards so that we can link to your research group in Leuven, to look. And we're very open to engaging with you and other stakeholders on the details there as well. But it is exactly those minimum standards. And Leander also mentioned the normative standards that are being developed in standardization bodies and so on. So I do think that there's more than just the risk assessment framework out there as well. And on the update to the wallet, I can say that it was launched on the 14th of July, as you know, you were in the room, and so it is being piloted right now. So at the moment, the latest update is that technical teams from the platforms, not just the very large online platforms, but also smaller platforms, have been put in contact with the technical teams providing the wallet. And I can also say that a number of them are now including the code in a test environment to test out whether the wallet code is functioning in their test environments. And we're engaging. So it's really at the engineering level that the discussions are taking place right now. And of course, also with member states. We know that 5 member states are piloting this. A 6th one has announced, but I cannot disclose this. The member state will announce it themselves. So this is also increasing. So we're optimistic there, but there are technical issues there that are being worked through right now. So it's in the hands of the engineers at the moment, the wallet. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And there were questions for you as well, if you could.
Well, I think only indirectly, as I can not speak for the Commission, as the colleague said. Just one message from my side. Article 5 of the AI Act is already in force since 2nd of February 2025, and it prohibits manifest manipulative practices and practices aimed at distorting behavior of vulnerable groups, including underage. This is already law, and this is already enforceable by courts in member states. So it is for those that provide services online and that provides AI systems to establish the necessary detection protocols aimed at detecting stress and disruptive behavior, so that they make sure that they are not breaching the law, that they are not incurring in patterns that are manifest manipulative practices. And this is the part that needs to engage the psychologists, the doctors, to advise them in the same vein that they engage psychologists and doctors and social workers to tell them how to make the platforms more attractive to people so that they will be scrolling down for hours. Well, now it's time to switch it to have safety and healthy platforms.
Thank you, Madam Perez. Now, finally, Leander, with you, we close the debate. Thank you.
I'll try to come back on a few things very briefly. On Australia, I think, everyone's watching Australia because, they are struggling with this, and hopefully we will learn from that. I think it's important to note that, Australia announced 2 things at the same time. One was an age restriction on social media, and the second was an age-appropriate design code, so a privacy code for kids. And I think, the message as I understood it is, if you don't make your services, again, safe and private for kids, then you're going to, fall foul of stronger measures. And I think, that is on the whole a reasonable approach. But things like, do you need a login or not? All of these are questions that that they are grappling with. What is social media, et cetera, et cetera. On Trump, I think, it's really important to understand the corporate capture and the corporate influence. I mean, I think having, an administration which is advancing, the positions of certain corporations is perhaps not surprising, but these are really, really big companies. They're extremely influential, and I think now it is very clear also how far that influence extends. I think it's the case here in Europe as well. There is a lot of corporate capture. Look at research. There was a question about benchmarking in research. There is not that much independent research. Where is the funding for independent research? Right? A lot of the research in this sector is funded by tech. Look on access to data. Companies control access data, which is why the DSA provisions on transparency are really, really important, because there is a huge imbalance in power, and in money that is being spent in this sector, and it's across the board. And tech companies are now funding NGOs. Where is the independent voice when if we want to bolster our democracy? It's a question of indeed enforcing the law, applying the law, having a strong civil society, having, strong independent media. There are lots of things that we need to think about here. On national implementation, I'd say it's really, really important for the member states to prioritize this and to give adequate resources, to their digital service coordinators and their AI Act coordinators. At the moment, that is not the case. I don't think all DSCs have even been announced, or in any case, certainly more needs to be done there. There was a question on size. Small is not safe. I think, most of the big platforms, take TikTok, for example, started really small. It has to be a question of product safety, of making sure that you can design whatever you want in your garage, but if you're going to put it on the market, it had better respect certain standards, and that should apply to everyone. On education, so EAC, the EU doesn't have very strong competency on education, but EdTech, just like to really reinforce that EdTech, like tech used in education, is a really, really big issue. And this is having a massive influence on our kids. And digital literacy, of course, is important. Of course, like parental controls, like, controlling access, all of these things are important. But the most important is to get to grips with persuasive design. So the most important is indeed to implement age-appropriate design. And thankfully, we have some good tools to do that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, you three. It's been a very, very rich debate. I think we could continue for 1 or 2 more hours, because it's really an interesting topic that, as I said before, it will have an important role in the coming years. So I'm pretty sure that we'll have more opportunities and to have more debates. So finally, I think, Laura, you want to ask?
Very briefly, just to thank all of the speakers. Thank you so much. It has been a really fruitful debate. Also to Luis, to Irache Garcia, and to the minister, and to all of you especially, because I know here we have parents from several Belgian schools, also civil society organizations. You took the floor, journalists, also representatives from the industry, I know, and we need also to understand how we develop these tools together with the industry. So I want to thank all of you. As Luis said, we could be talking for hours, and we will organize, at least myself, I can talk by myself, I will organize more events. I will be in touch with you to have this permanent dialogue, and especially just brief conclusions maybe we can take, that there is a huge consensus that we need to act now. I think that at least with the diagnosis is quite clear, but also that we have several obstacles to tackle. And we have some obstacles that come from outside Europe, from inside Europe. You raised the point, there is an imbalance of power. We are talking about big tech companies that have developed their business model on the health of our minor and children. So it's not an easy battle, but I think that the European Union has waken up, and we are working on the right path. And I think that we can have a lot of hope. We will help the Commission from the Parliament, and we will do it together. But I think we go on the right direction. And also another conclusion, that we need to have an holistic approach from the technical, the digital side, the juridic side on taking the data protection, also educational, health. So of course, there is no magic tool to tackle this, but we need to start working with several of them. Parental control, age verification, privacy friendly. So we need to break some taboos and to start testing, which is working. So finally, I want to say that we listen you. I think it was a very good exchange of views, and that we will continue, and we will win this battle. Thank you so much.
Thank you.